All right, welcome everyone to September's first pub meeting. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically with board members and relevant city staff attending remotely, electronically, or by phone. And the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcasting of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and the public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda. And you can also submit written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with Pub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted towards people that were made vulnerable by systemic inequity. And that means stepping up and as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And the way that we do that is we are active and deliberate with our intentions. We speak up and we speak out. Each person on this board is empowered to maintain the culture of the board, and we will focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
Hi, my name is Amy Archer Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you are addressing or that you're just addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by me. Please limit any chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for assistance, or reminding us if your hand's been raised and you haven't been called on to speak. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. Co-hosts may lower your hands once you begin speaking just to maintain the flow of the conversation. During public comment periods, public can also raise your hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise or lower your hand. Videos may be turned on when you're speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute or unmute. Public comment will be taken during the comment period towards the middle of the meeting. You can sign up through chat with me or raise your hand during that period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. As mentioned, the meeting's being recorded. Pass it back to you for agenda real quick.
All right, so on the agenda today, we have a One Water update from leadership. And so we're going to have that back and forth, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion time amongst the pub members if we have any follow-up questions or ideas. And then we will address public comment and review of minutes, and then do some internal pub work, hopefully before the end of our meeting today. All right, so before we start, are there any disclosures of communications? All right, not seeing any hand raises or voices jumping out. Wanted to go to our first topic. So as announced at the last meeting, the city has announced exploration of the One Water. And as a board, we have expressed interest in hearing from leadership. And so today we've invited City Administrator Mike Jordan, Deputy City Administrator Priya Dhanapal, and BES's project lead Becky Tilson, just to give us a brief update and to talk about the next steps. So I'm going to pass the floor to whoever would like to start that update.
Thank you, Robin. This is Priya here, Deputy City Administrator from the City of Portland. And I have Mike and Becky, Mike Jordan, our City Administrator, and Becky Tilson, Project Manager for the One Water exploratory phase, present as well for, and I'll be talking to you all. First of all, thank you for having us here with you to talk a little bit more about the One Water exploratory process and where we're going from here. The Mayor Wheeler gave us direction to proceed with an exploratory phase into One Water on August 14th. I want to talk through at a high level the project scope and the potential outcomes of this first exploratory phase and what might come next. And I also want to speak briefly to the nexus with the ongoing natural resource service delivery work as well. Mike and Becky will join me at the end of the discussion for any Q&A that you might have. So firstly, about the scope of work, I want to emphasize this is an exploratory phase. It is a preliminary feasibility study, and we will be evaluating the feasibility of OneWater for the city of Portland, and potentially come up with a draft roadmap for the potential applicability of OneWater management approach for the city of Portland. It is an exploration of whether the OneWater framework may help us address some of the key challenges and also take advantage of the opportunities, both building on our current successes and thinking about how the change in the form of government may open up for new or different avenues for collaboration, and also long-term financial feasibility and improved service delivery. The drivers for this work, as I previously discussed, are long-term financial health and feasibility for the bureaus, improved service delivery to the communities, and environmental stewardship, and creating a more sustainable, integrated, holistic, resilient water management system, and also an opportunity to build on the successes and opportunities presented by the change in the form of government. Again, this is an exploratory phase. It's an opportunity to see this potential in the OneWater model in the Portland's context. If there's an opportunity in this out of this exploratory phase, if we see that there is opportunities available, we will do a deeper dive in-depth feasibility analysis when we will engage with stakeholders on a deeper level and think about a potential path forward. And any potential implementation after this will be definitely phased over time. This exploratory phase could lead us into a variety of directions. We may proceed forward with the modified scope. We might look forward to do more in-depth feasibility to get more information or consider alternative approaches. What I shared is just a description of a variety of outcomes that may come from this exploratory phase. And to support this work during the exploratory phase, we have a consultant team on board, as well as internal project management team. Becky Tilson, the project manager for this phase, is also here in the room. I think she waved earlier. The project management team and the consultant team is working with the OneWater task force, which is made up of leadership teams of Water Bureau and BES as well as representatives from PBOT, Parks, BPS, and the Natural Resource Service Delivery team too. We've been working through what is already happening in Portland that overlaps with the OneWater framework, learning about what OneWater is, and daylighting some of the key questions and considerations as we go through this process. We are holding a few employee focus groups this week, and we have an employee communications in the works too. We're developing a list of external stakeholders to connect with during this limited period, which includes you as well. If there's a direction to move forward with a more in-depth analysis, there will be more engagement for all stakeholders in the community as well moving forward. Looking forward to October 1st, which is the deadline for this preliminary exploratory phase. The consultants will prepare an assessment of the pros, cons, opportunities, and challenges of OneWater approach in the Portland context, considering the current challenges we face and the work that we have underway, building on our successes and addressing areas for improvement. This will include analysis of the current management systems, our plans, our financial realities, organizations, and cultures, and so on. Then we will we'll come up with the potential for a path forward and a very high-level roadmap for delivery per the recommendation. And when that report is available from the consultants in early October, we'll definitely share it with you all when we share it with the mayor's office. As we work through this phase, we will receive the recommendation from the consultants, and we will present it to Mayor Ted Wheeler, who is the executive sponsor for this initiative, along with City Administrator Mike Jordan. And lastly, when we present the recommendation, we will, depending on what the recommendation is, the mayor may direct us for further feasibility analysis. But it totally depends on what our opportunities and challenges are based on the analysis. And lastly, now that I've shared a little more detail about the One Water, I also want to speak to a potential nexus with the natural resource work. First, we recognize and value all of the work that has happened to date from the natural resources team. It is exciting to consider how we can best steward our many natural resources here in Portland. One Water is not taking over the conversation or the project. The way we're thinking about it is the natural resources is an umbrella, and One Water is one component under that umbrella. We are convening leaders in the natural resources space this week to talk more about the nexus, and the staff from both efforts are connected. That work is not being replaced, and I want to be clear about that. This work is also existing in the larger context of the public works service area establishment and build out, which is new but ongoing, and of course the change in the form of government coming next year as well. We cannot and are not having this conversation oblivious to this larger context. I am optimistic about the opportunity that we have here to think about how best to serve our communities and manage water holistically. We want to make sure that One Water is the correct framework, and I'm excited to work through this exploratory phase. And if there's promise, I hope to have a larger conversation with all stakeholders, including you, about the path forward prior to making any implementation at that time. With that, I hope we have some time for questions and comments. And once again, thank you for having us here.
So Priya, would you like us to open the floor to pub members, or did Becky or Mike have anything they wanted to add before we got started?
Nothing to add. Priya covered it really well. I'm just here to support regarding questions that might be at a more of an enterprise scale. So, and Becky, I know, is here to talk about the nuts and bolts of the project if that comes up.
That's right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Priya. And thanks, Robin.
Thank all of you. So I've got Karen and then Chris. Go ahead.
I think Karen might have had some audio issues, so why don't we go ahead with Chris and then we'll jump back to Karen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering about the speed at which we're going to be doing this. Are we shooting for, if everything was decided we want to do this for like July of next year implementation, so we need to start the background stuff in like October, November, so we don't have the issue that we had 2 years ago when we did reorganization? And also, are we going to try to put all public works together in different ways, so we kind of do it now and then have to redo it again? I just want to make sure we don't make the same mistake last time we did.
Well, I will tell you, I had a little bit of a difficult time hearing you, Chris, but I think if I heard you right, I resemble the remark. No. Let me start and I'll let Priya jump in and Becky if they want. I think the reason that the mayor asked for this exploratory phase is that we don't want to, build things and then have to rebuild them later. So I think this is really a very high level. Is there value in this concept for the city of Portland? And that's why we brought on some outside help and some discussion there. I will tell you, I see just personally an opportunity for us to have a conversation at this time that the city is transitioning, to see if there's a there, and I truly believe there is. I also believe that the alignment of the natural resources work that's been done over the past couple of years, actually longer than that, but intensely over the past couple of years, I think there's a natural alignment that we should explore and see what that looks like. And so I think the timing is because of the transition, quite honestly. But I also think that the mayor, I believe his colleagues, and I know the leadership at the city are very interested in doing this in kind of a staged way. And then the last thing I'll say is, if there's a there, and you begin to look towards any level of further discussion, and if there was anything that the city wanted to do in the first phase, if you will, we usually end up looking at these kinds of things through budget cycles. And so we'll have a budget cycle that comes up next spring. And if there is anything that could be done in a first phase or first step on this journey, then there's an opportunity to align that with a budget cycle. So those are little bit of comments about the timing and the approach of stepping into this one step at a time. So.
Thank you both. Go ahead, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing that she's unmuted, so she might still be having computer troubles. So let me send it over to Bob, and then we'll come back to Karen.
Thanks for the update. I guess in general, I'm supportive of this concept. I think it has potential. At the same time, I guess 2 questions / comments. One is that each time in recent years that we've seen a reorganization, we've seen natural resources, from my perspective, downgraded. It's gone the wrong direction every single time. And so I'm wondering why we should have confidence in this process that natural resources will actually be elevated or included and not further downgraded from where they already are at. And number 2, it's very hard to reconcile this with the way, honestly, I think we've been horsed around for the last year on the natural resources unit, where we've been spending a lot of damn time and a lot of energy, frankly, spinning our wheels and getting nowhere. And now suddenly this new proposal that's much, much larger, much more complicated, is emerging in the 11th hour and being moved through at a rapid pace. And I'm just trying to reconcile what we've gone through for the last year and the time and energy that we put into that, and how these may dovetail or not. So I guess those are the 2 questions. Why should we have confidence that natural resources will not be further downgraded? And how does this really fit with what we've experienced on the natural resources unit over the last year?
Really easy questions, Bob. Thanks for that.
Well, if you return I could have asked you directly, you know.
I think rather than any kind of complete confidence, I think what I would expect is diligence. And Priya mentioned it. I will hold her accountable for that stakeholders are engaged in this, and that we're having a broad conversation about how we step through any change that we decide to make. And you know that I'm a big supporter of having a natural resources organization within city government. And I think this is an opportunity for us to explore that at scale. I think the conversation that's gone on for the past couple of years, I wouldn't necessarily characterize it the way you did, but I would say that it was a very fragmented look rather than a more holistic look at how the city approaches the preservation and the stewardship of natural resources in the city. And I would like that to be a more comprehensive and bigger approach. And it just so happens that with this transition in government, at least for a little while, I've got an opportunity to drive that conversation a little bit. And that's my expectation of the conversation as it moves forward. So I'm not here to defend the city over X number of years. I am here to say that I think we have an opportunity to really look at natural resources in a much more holistic way and make organizational changes that actually memorialize that thinking. And we've struggled with that, as you know, over time. And so that's my hope going forward. Again, in a stepped process with the exploratory phase and moving forward together. And I think we can continue and even do a better job of engaging stakeholders in all aspects of this discussion, including the natural resources part.
Is the natural resources unit process dead then? Is this superseding that, or is this?
I don't think it's dead. What we're looking for is how can these two conversations either merge or align in such a way that's it's an advantage for all of us, you know.
Thanks.
Yep.
Do we have Karen on the line?
Well, I'm
Third
not
time's a
sure. Can you
charm.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Robin. I have a question about the criteria that the city will be using. Let me show myself here. That the criteria the city will be using in order to decide whether or not to proceed with a full feasibility study and employ a consultant.
Priya, do you want to take a shot at that one?
Yes.
Becky?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that one, and Mike and Becky, feel free to chime in. So at this point, you know, we are 2 weeks into this exploration. We are looking into the, you know, what are the advantages, or how can OneWater approach, first of all, how will this look like for Portland? And what are the opportunities? What are the challenges? Basically, we're doing a SWOT analysis to how this would look like for the city of Portland. And depending on, you know, how that is going to look like, we might, there's a whole wide range of directions it might go. If there are 10 opportunities and no challenges at all, then it's a no-brainer. But if there's, you know, if there's more challenges than opportunities, then we'll have to reconsider this approach for the city. So it completely depends on what how this what this analysis results in, and then we would present that recommendation to the mayor, and based on what we present, based on the pros, cons, opportunities and challenges, we will make a recommendation on whether we will need an in-depth feasibility analysis. And then as we spoke earlier, the implementation is expected to happen over several budget cycles. And so there's a lot of opportunities here to do an in-depth analysis and to look at all the different analysis that we could possibly do before we make the decision to do the implementation. And Becky and Mike, if there's anything else that you would like to add to it.
Thanks, Priya. I'll add just briefly. Hi, everybody. I'm Becky Tilson. I'm working with Priya on this project. Nice to see you all. Thanks for having us. I think the way that we've been thinking about One Water is that there's a variety of things that fall underneath the One Water umbrella. That part of this SWOT analysis that Priya talked about, an eventual phased implementation, depending on how this first stage goes, there's a range of things that fall underneath the sort of principles of One Water, including, structural changes, but not necessarily, right? So there's a lot of things that different communities have applied that are One Water. There's a lot of things that we already do as a city, both bureaus in collaboration and bureaus independently. So really what we're trying to do with this initial phase is keep our minds really open to the spectrum of things that are One Water, and which ones might be appropriate, if any, in our context.
And Karen, I'm going to be a little more blunt. I have grave concerns about the fiscal future of how we deal with the watershed in all the different ways that we do in the city. And I am looking for, as Priya said, there's going to be kind of a SWOT analysis. What I am looking for is the opportunity for us to be more effective and more efficient, and be more intentional and thoughtful about the challenges that I think the urban landscape is going to face over the next 20 to 50 years when it comes to the challenge of preserving the watershed health and the natural resources that we value here in the face of what will inevitably be more intense urbanization. We're in a little bit of a lull right now, but as climate changes, we are going to see this place grow. And I am concerned that over time, we will need a much more holistic and much more intentional way of dealing with preserving the urban natural resources and watershed health as we continue to grow. And in the face of what will be very challenging fiscal issues that the city is going to have to face. And I'm looking at them in almost every direction from the chair I sit in, whether it's the general fund, it's transportation, it's permitting and development, or it's the utilities. And I just see huge challenges for us coming. And I think this idea is worth exploring for us to see if I'm not naive enough to believe that we will stop the upward trend of costs because I know the capital costs that are facing us in the future. But I am hopeful that we might be able to slow the acceleration of cost with a more intentional, collaborative, and coordinated effort in both the delivery of clean water, the processing of wastewater, and the management of the watersheds, which is really, we call it stormwater, but it's really the management of clean water. And how do we treat it as a resource in all the different things that we can do to preserve it? And I'm sorry for the long-windedness, but I think we're on the verge of, it's too strong to say existential crisis, but it is a very challenging fiscal environment that this city faces going forward.
I just have one follow-up, and then I'm happy to, it's not exactly rhetorical, so if you have a thought on it, please offer. But if not, I'd offer it as, please consider thinking about it. And that is, you all had, I believe, mentioned identification of opportunities and challenges as being among the what's going to influence the city's decision on whether to move forward with a full feasibility study. And when I hear challenges and opportunities in the same or an adjacent sentence that talks about efficiency and effectiveness, but particularly when it talks about efficiency, the question that comes into my mind is opportunities for who and challenges for who. And I am skeptical that those are questions that really can be fully vetted in 2 weeks. It just seems the scale of those questions and the timeline, Mr. Jordan, that you were, just referring to, it just makes me highly skeptical that there really can be a full vetting of challenges and opportunities by October 1st. So my question, if you have a thought or a response to opportunities for who and challenges for who, I would be interested in that. But I would ask all leaders to be continuing to ask themselves that question over as long as this is a topic of decision.
I share your skepticism that anything can be fully vetted in the next month, and I think the expectation is that there would be enough discussion and analysis that we would at least be able to say this concept is worth pursuing further or not. And whether the One Water concept goes further or not does not change the fiscal reality that this city faces. And when you ask a question of whose opportunity and whose challenge, I think it applies equally to all the people who live in this city. We would be considering opportunities and challenges for everybody. But as I stated before, I think there's a way for us to do this in a way that considers not only the dollars and cents of it, but also who benefits and who's burdened as you make changes. And that's a reality that I think we always need to keep in consideration. I'm not sure that was the core of your comment / question, Karen, but I believe that to be true.
All right, so with that, we'll pass the floor to Kyle.
Thank you, Robin. Kyle Chipman, just addressing whoever this might be best received. So I worked my way through the One Water website just to orient myself to the overall effort. And first, I was just curious if this is where we, kind of the city of Portland, are already members of the U.S. Water Alliance. If not, what do you find in your initial investigation most appealing? Is it more methodologies and resources offered by One Water, or it's the partnership and network that avails itself by joining the U.S. Water Alliance? I saw a lot of different, in the communities at practice section, there's a lot of different kind of avenues for partnership. So it's kind of gaining access to that peer network. And then finally, beyond just the resources levied or the partnerships and peer kind of reference points for those who've gone through this process, also, it's mentioned that the Water Alliance is member supported. I was just wondering if there's a cost associated with joining up.
Priya, I'll let you jump there. I've got some folks waiting for me right here at my door, so I'm going to have to jump. But would be happy to come back to Pub anytime. It was good to see you all again.
Thank you, Mike.
Priya, do you want me to take that?
No, I can take a shot at it,
Okay.
and you can take over, Dawn. So just to make sure I understood your question, it was about our membership with US Water Alliance and what were we hoping to accomplish or benefit from this membership with US Water Alliance. So US Water Alliance, as you might see from the website, is one of the a leading nonprofit organization that forwards advances policies related to One Water nationally, and the membership cost is, I believe, $11,000. Don, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And the benefits, they've been a part of our conversation right from day one. They have rich resources in this field, and they have connections to other peer cities. We are hoping to have a peer panel discussion on One Water and the Natural Resources Nexus on September 26th. We are hoping to have One Water as a representation of One Water in the discussion as well. Having access to peer cities, having access to resources, and how they have implemented this in other cities is also helpful for us. Mami Hara, who's the CEO of US Water Alliance, is one of the consultants who are helping us with this work as well. We feel pretty well supported by the US Water Alliance in our exploratory phase. And if there's anything else that I missed that Don or Becky you want to add on, you're welcome to chime in.
I was just going to say that dollar amount is about right. It's maybe a little bit more, and yes, we are members.
Wonderful, thank you.
Go ahead, Bob. You are muted, Bob.
Sorry. I appreciate what Mike had to say about this being something of an existential crisis in terms of funding. And that has been the basis now for many years for de-emphasizing natural resources. And having participated in kind of trying to advance those programs over 3 decades, I would say there's always been a hostility within BES toward that piece of the puzzle. It's always been an uphill battle that competed with a much, much larger and more powerful and well-funded sewer side of the equation. And there's always been this kind of existential battle over whether BES is an environmental agency or a sewer agency. And my perception is that over the last 6 or 7 years, the sewer side won. That basically it is now basically a sewer agency that does some environmental things, but it's no longer on the footing it once was. And I've heard that from many, many people inside the Bureau. That's not something that's just an external perspective. That's an internal perspective as well. And so I guess I'm struggling with this kind of upheaval and how, as we reorganize, I guess the powers that be are going to say that this has to be part of the equation, or does it get literally and figuratively engineered out as this reorganizes? I mean, because I think the original statements to me gave me some hope, but I guess as an external stakeholder, as a member of PUB, what I really want to hear is it is a commitment that all 3 pieces of that puzzle, the sewers, drinking water, and watersheds, are considered co-equal in this equation. That they are, all 3 are priorities, that 2 cannot happen without the third. And I haven't heard that yet. And I guess I'm looking for confirmation from you that in fact, that is explicitly the objective, and that will be the organizing principle, and that it's not possible to come back with a 2-legged stool rather than a 3-legged stool.
Thank you. To answer your question very simply, yes, of course, there is equal importance to drinking water, sewer, stormwater, and the watershed. So that is a simple answer, and I cannot speak to what happened previously. I've been with the city for 2 months, and I can let Don or Becky, who's been with the city longer, speak to what's happened in the past. But from the conversation that I've been having in the past 2 months, which includes leadership from all 3 bureaus, leadership from parks and BPS and the team members of the natural resources service delivery area, there's a lot of optimism in elevating natural resources as we continue to explore One Water. And whether that conversation is happening parallelly, whether we're aligning together or we merging together at some point, is yet to be determined. But at this point, it is important that we have these conversations and we give importance to holistically look at the systems together, and absolutely give utmost importance and equal importance to all the areas that you mentioned, Bob.
I guess the only other thing that I'll add is that, and hi, I'm sorry to introduce myself earlier. I'm Dawn Uchiyama, Director at BES. I just think that we have to think about this over a trajectory. We often say we're in the 100-year business, and unfortunately, we've underinvested in our treatment plant and pumping and collection system for the past 20 or so years, and we find ourselves in a moment in time where we have to direct our resources there to manage the risk that we face. And so I don't see this as an either or forever situation. I just think we have to course correct and get the treatment plant and pump stations and collection system on the right investment strategy so that we can invest in all three business lines, all three responsibilities. And as you point out, Bob, that are all interconnected. And so that was our intention with our reorganization. This has been our intention with our budget work and our portfolio management work, is to be able to be transparent about the level of investment across all of our portfolios, and to go into that with our eyes wide open about the risk that we carry in each of those areas. So I don't, while in the short term, we need to make some course corrections to get over the problems we face with the lack of investment that's happened the last decade or so, but it's not a long, it's not a forever investment pattern. It's just to get us through the risks that we face now. And as you know, Bob, we've been looking to create a space where we can work with partners to increase the funding in natural resources. That has been the strategy. It isn't that we want the work to stop. We want to create a city space where more partners can invest and we can raise and increase the work. That's always been the idea. It's never been to end it or to scale it back.
Hey, Don, if I could just reply to that though very quickly. I'm fully for
I think Bob froze.
He froze for me as well.
I'm glad that was not just me. Okay.
Give us just a second. I'll message him and let him know.
I do have to go on to my next appointment, but thank you again for having me, and I'm happy to come back to Pub the next meeting or future meetings, and I'm also happy to answer questions through email if y'all choose to do so that way. So
Thank you, Priya.
thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
And while we find Bob, is Becky, are you able to stay on for a little bit longer? Or okay, beautiful. Are there any pub questions that we can put on the floor? Go ahead, Karen.
I'll throw this out just until Bob gets back. And I think it's directed to Becky because it's a question about something you said, Becky, or alluded to anyway, that I believe I heard that in the city's assessment of potential opportunities that, some conclusions may be reached that, don't necessarily point to like massive restructuring and tearing everything down and building it back up. Those were not your words. Those are mine, obviously. Sorry, put myself on here. But I did hear, I think, something you said about there may be things that we are already doing, or that, some concepts of One Water, which, I mean, it's a shorthand and kind of maybe a little bit of a catchphrase. And I always appreciate if we can be more specific. But I would be very interested in hearing about the things that you all identify that we are already doing, or things that we have in place that we could do more of, or we could do better to advance this One Water concept. And that, just, for background, is something that PUB has been talking about as long as I have been on the board, which is, 5 or so years now, is, how can, we break down silos, which is another kind of a cliche, but, how can there be more, sharing of resources and joint missions across bureaus to accomplish environmental objectives and accomplish, advances for the workforce. And so if we are doing that sort of thing, I mean, I know we are doing some of that, but I'd really be interested, like, what kind of floats to the surface when you all are looking at, again, sort of through the One Water lens, like, what are we already doing that really does work towards that? And, I'm just thinking maybe we're doing enough of it that we maybe don't need to hire a big high-paid consultant to tell us that. Maybe we can come to some conclusions about things that we're already doing that we could just do better. And we don't necessarily have to label it, I guess, and have a big fancy consultant give us a, another strategic plan, I guess.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I'm going to take a stab, and I see Don and Eddie here too, and I invite you to weigh in with some more specifics if you'd like to. But just to say that that's part of the framework for this 45-day period that, as Priya mentioned, we're kind of 2 weeks into this exploratory period, is really thinking about what the city already does, kind of starting from where we are. So not starting assuming that we have no focus on sustainability, no focus on affordability, but starting where we are. So really grounding ourselves in where we are, what programs exist, what collaborations exist, what conversations have been happening between the two bureaus, and then within the individual bureaus themselves with our other partner bureaus across the city, that could, serve as a starting point for us. Then just this morning, we talked a little bit more about what One Water is. And again, it's a spectrum of things, and it's kind of however a city defines it is what we learned this morning. And then our next step is to really kind of combine those two conversations and say, okay, what are we already doing? What is One Water? Is there an opportunity for One Water to help us advance some of those conversations? Are we already doing them? I think just a couple of examples, and then I'd love Don and Eddie to chime in as well, is some of the work around affordability that I've been learning about. I'm kind of 2 weeks into this project myself, and some conversations around sustainability and resiliency that have to do with, that fall under the umbrella of One Water. All the conversations that we've had around engaging our community, around advancing our city commitment to equity. Those are things also that fall underneath the umbrella of One Water. So it's that type of thing that's risen to the surface. I think there's also deeper and more technical examples between the two bureaus of conversations that have been happening for a long time to try to advance the way that we deliver services in the community. And I'll say that, Mike's comments, when he said, I'm going to be really stark here, are right. They're part of the context that we're operating in right now. And so that's part of the conversation too. We have these very real constraints and challenges that are facing us, that we have these opportunities presented by increased collaboration between the bureaus, and kind of how can we take those things and navigate a path forward. So there's lots of questions on the table. The way I keep talking about it is we're going to ask a lot of questions in this exploratory phase, and we may not be able to answer very many of them. but we're sure going to put them on the table. So Eddie or Don, do you have any other thoughts to Karen's question?
I'll go. Edward Campbell, I'm the interim Water Bureau Director. Glad to be here with you all today. Yeah, as we've learned more, and I think we had actually a good conversation today with the task force as we were given a set of principles to think about how they apply in Portland. Some of the things that we're learning about both in person and then through the same kinds of approaches that you are talking about, Karen, in terms of just the research, is just that One Water is really a set of principles. It's an approach to how you do work, really, and it's not a specific outcome-based initiative. And so within that, there's all kinds of places where we're either approaching the things that they've identified as priorities, like affordability, like our equity work, like our community engagement work. And then there's ways in which we've approached major initiatives in which we've applied very similar One Water principles. So I'll give you an example from the drinking water side. One of the sets of principles we learned about is approaching regulatory requirements with an approach that's long-term and broader than just the minimum sort of standard of the regulatory requirement. And we in water spent a decade working in the Sandy Basin to prepare for an environmental compliance program that allows us to comply with the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act, which resulted in what we call our Habitat Conservation Plan. And we have a 50-year regulatory compliance plan that we've worked out with partners, both agency partners, community partners, NGOs in the Sandy Basin, that is well beyond the letter of the regulatory requirement, but which has community buy-in, multiple benefits, and multiple agencies in which we're achieving these outcomes. And so that's just one example of the way that we're already doing so much of the work that's described in One Water, that we do have this opportunity, I think, to put more of a spotlight on, to help reframe and to make folks aware, either at the leadership level or at the community level, that these principles are things that much of which we're already doing a lot to support. So I think those opportunities are right there for us, and I appreciate you bringing that up today.
Sorry, I have to unmute. Thank you, Eddie. That is well said. And the only thing that I will add is some specific projects where we, like with our Infor, our asset management software program, we're working collaboratively to deploy a new software program. It's a big effort. Our teams are working very closely together. And then we also have been, of course, we've been working for decades on our rates and our rate study, and water customer service supports BES. We work very closely there. And there are a number of smaller initiatives where we are already collaborating. So in many ways, it's true, we are already doing some One Water things. And so I guess this feasibility study will reveal if there are other things that we should be doing.
This is Robin. I'd like to throw a question out. During the 6-week exploratory phase, will the community outside of advisory bodies be engaged at all?
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, we've sent out a couple of emails. I don't have a list off the top of my head of who those have gone to, with a request for just some initial feedback. And we're working on a kind of a list of external stakeholders that we want to engage with as best we can in the time allotted. We really recognize that given the timeline, there's not an opportunity for more rigorous, potentially more meaningful engagement with folks. And I would reiterate something that Priya said, which is that, at the end of this exploratory phase on October 1st, we'll have some recommendation about whether or not, like Mike said, there's a there. And if there is a there, then the deeper exploratory phase will definitely involve a lot more stakeholder engagement, community engagement, internal stakeholder engagement, making sure that we have all the voices at the table in a much more rigorous way. So, you know, the time constraints are very real, and the last thing we want is kind of some rubber stamp things. So we're going to try to do what we can do well and meaningfully in the time allotted, but also recognizing the constraints presented by the timeline. And we're trying to, you know, design the scope accordingly, right? So we're not going to say One Water implementation begins October 2nd and the decision's fully made. That's not what's happening here. So I think that hopefully will alleviate any concern about that.
Thank you. Any other pub members have a question while we've got the leadership group here?
As Priya and Mike said, we're definitely whenever you'd like us back, we'll happily return. Please email any other questions or thoughts as well. Realize you gave us a bunch of your time today, and I appreciate that.
All right, so with that, I think I'll wrap up this portion of the conversation. I want to thank all of the leadership members who came and explained kind of what's happening behind the scenes, and just for constantly engaging with us and just requesting more engagement. So we'll definitely do what we can on our end. And so I will shift, I guess the next part of the meeting today will kind of be more behind the scenes. Pub members, is there any further concerns or questions that we have amongst each other that we would like to think about or press further regarding One Water, and perhaps how we want to navigate it in the next month, as well as how we want to engage that assessment when it comes out in October?
Well, people, oh, Karen, I'll jump to you in just a second. I just wanted to let folks know that I was in touch with Bob offline, and unfortunately he lost internet and connectivity. So I'm not sure whether he's going to be able to reconnect, but he is working on it. Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I appreciate that, Robin. And you know, I don't have any grandiose or terrific ideas about how we engage going forward. I guess just generally, I want some specifics. I want some examples. I want some, real life. This could be an opportunity to so on. And this is how this community would benefit, or, this is how the workers would benefit. I want some specifics. And I recognize that this is a gigantic topic, and I'm not trying to oversimplify it and looking for a checklist or something, but I'm just concerned about opening up a huge new thing before we've finished, or I don't know, done everything we can to do the things that we're already doing better. And now we're going to start on, this whole new planning exercise. I mean, I'm just skeptical about all of that, even though in concept, of course it sounds great. But I don't want concept. I want some specifics. And I don't know how we get that other than just to keep asking. I guess one thought is just, I'm pretty darn sure they're going to decide to move forward with a feasibility study. We'll see. But kind of sounds like the decision's been made, and they're just kind of looking for some data to support that, to justify that, which is what it is. But one thing we could ask for, supposedly this, so there's going to be in the next budget, there'll be a bill for a consultant. I mean, not a bill, but there's going to be consultant costs to do the second phase or the more in-depth feasibility study, and we can perhaps continue to ask for more specifics there, and maybe ask to be involved in the selection of a consultant. I don't know. Now I'm sort of trailing off, but I think the budget process is probably the place for us to try and get some of those specifics. That's all I got for now.
Thank you, Karen. Let's go to Alexis and then Kyle.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was trying to start my video, but it does not want to work today. Yeah, thanks so much, Amy and Robin, for making that happen and for having them join. It was really good to hear from them, and appreciate the questions from fellow pub members. I think I was struck by the same thing that you were, Karen, by a lot of good rhetoric, very good talking points. And I think it probably is like worth pursuing and a good idea, and agree that we'll get to a feasibility study, but would really like to understand a little bit better about what they are actually looking for, and what the criteria are. And I noted, Karen, that the answer to your question, they didn't really answer your question. They talked about opportunities and challenges, but didn't say what falls into an opportunity and what falls into a challenge, what is a threat, and really how are they defining those terms and trying, and so I agree with you completely that I'm really looking for some more specifics. I remain very concerned about trying to do this in 6 weeks. I still don't understand the rushed timeline, besides political reasons. But I do wonder if this is something where and maybe they said this and I just missed it, is are we allowed to see the report from these consultants? Can we see the outcomes of this initial exploratory phase, and so that then we're able to be engaged more effectively in the feasibility study and ask these questions around around the details, is just something I'd be curious if they would be willing to share it with us.
Thank you. Kyle Chipman. I'm going to leave my video off because it's been freezing up on Zoom. But I'm very much in agreement with Karen and Alexis, and I felt a little foolish for conflating the U.S. Water Alliance with One Water. But honestly, I worked through the website of One Water, and it just felt like I just kept landing on one-pagers and infographics and not something to kind of wrap my arms around. The closest I could get felt like there's some kind of peer network to at least talk to others who've gone through similar consolidation exercises and gain that value. But it is SWOT analysis even cleaner just to kind of convert it into what is the value, and is there any cost associated? And that cost could even be a kind of dragging out of, like Bob was mentioning, the Bureau of Natural Resources or the NRSD, and kind of the decisions that have already been made, and then taking them on another flying tangent based on these new methodologies or principles. So yeah, I just wanted to agree with Karen and Alexis. Thank you.
Thank you both. Go ahead, Julia.
And again, I'm also on a video off moment. I apologize. But yeah, I echo all of that. I do, to the degree possible, want to use this process to, if possible, force the issue on making sure that environmental concerns are not getting short shrift. I think theoretically that might be a benefit of this approach, but it's just everything's theoretical at this point. The whole thing seems very theoretical. So the rush, I also agree that it's we're not getting really sufficient responses about why it's being rushed, other than as Alexis said, it's political. But I kind of feel like the train is leaving the station, and I think we just need to do the best we can to keep it on track, so to speak. And I also, I thought I recalled, Alexis, that they said they would share that report with us, but hopefully someone else, maybe Amy, who's taking minutes, maybe somebody could confirm whether or not that's true. But I agree, these materials definitely need to be shared with us so we can be substantially involved. I don't want this to be another repeat of the countless other times that major decisions have been made without consulting us. So yeah, anything we can do that's concrete, that kind of helps ensure that we're engaged in a substantive way, we should be doing that.
Julia, this is Amy, and I believe you're correct. I thought I heard the same thing, but when I do the minutes, I will confirm that and let you all know. But I'm assuming that they would be sharing the information, at least in some summary form, and could provide more detail to the pub. So.
This is Robin. I'll throw my 2 cents in. Well, with it being Labor Day weekend, I just wanted to kind of think about how the Bureau workers will be impacted. In general, I like the idea of consolidation, but I'm wondering, are there going to be like a loss of employees just based on redundancies? And with our budgets, I think it was the operations and maintenance slice of the pie that seemed to be sold to us as really the only opportunity to reduce or impact the budget based on debts and capital projects kind of being in place and not necessarily negotiable. And so I'm just wanted to throw it out there, thinking about, is this going to be a net positive for the employees? Are we going to lose some positions? And then just with Mike Jordan talking about funding, bringing it back to the budget, is this a main option for them to navigate a tight fiscal future, or are there still other options? I know during the most recent budget phase, we had learned that like service delivery charges weren't being fully, they didn't have full cost recovery. And so just wanting to navigate the concept of consolidation can be a good idea, but how is this going to impact the workers? And is the consolidation good for water, stormwater, and watershed, as well as the budget and the workers? All right, and so with that, let's give Karen the floor again.
Sorry, I don't need the floor for very much, but it just, thanks for saying that, Robin. I'll also share 100% those concerns about impacts on the workforce and how much the workforce will be consulted and so on. And I would just, for future, Chris Richard, as the representative of the workers on this board, I would love to hear, as you feel comfortable sharing and are able to share, what some of the labor unions are thinking about all this and saying about all this and how much they're being engaged. I mean, I don't expect specifics on that, but I do expect that the city is among the quote unquote stakeholders, and we all know the problems with using that term, but I sure as heck hope that the labor unions are among the folks that are being heavily consulted on benefits and challenges of this. And if they're not, then that's a really big flag for me.
My video is not working. I will be fairly blunt. We didn't know this was occurring. Yeah. We were, at least my union, we were at an actual conference. And so far, we really as the union haven't been engaged yet, but we are attempting to engage in
Chris, that was really hard to hear, but I believe you said that so far the unions have not really been engaged, but that's something you're hoping for in the future. Is that correct? Is that the essence of what you said?
correct. Yes. Is that better?
Yes, thank you, Chris.
It was very, very poor where I am.
And in light of just folks who have had technical issues, I did want to just acknowledge for the record that Bob was able to rejoin. And Bob, as I mentioned in the text, you cut out right before you started talking in your last comment. So if there was anything, I know that the leadership is gone, but if there was anything you wanted to state for Pub for the record, so that I can capture it in the notes before we do some final, I want to make sure we have some time for public comment and the officially doing that before the end of the meeting and discussion of next steps. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Now the internet cut out for some reason here, so I apologize for that. All I was gonna say in response to Don was that it has to be an inside and outside game. I think increasingly the city has seen natural resources as something they can export through PSEF, that if they give enough grants out to small organizations to build capacity, that suffices as an environmental program for the city of Portland. And I think those PSEF grants and that capacity building is incredibly important, but it's in no way, shape, or form a substitute for the city having its own strong environmental programs, because it's a city that actually does that kind of landscape transformation when they, tear up Powell Boulevard or 82nd Avenue. It's those opportunities that are really transformative. And there's no one that has an impact at scale the way the city does itself. So I just want to make sure that as the city explores this, that it's not a situation where the city takes on sewers and the city takes on drinking water and PSEF becomes the escape hatch for natural resources. The city needs to reestablish really strong natural resource programs within the infrastructure service area.
Thank you, Bob. And thank everyone that's commented today. If any further areas of focus that you'd like to discuss come up, of course, forward those along to Amy or I. And then because we have about 15 minutes left, we're probably not going to do another topic, but we definitely need to get public comment as well as some updates about upcoming meetings and how we plan to navigate. So let's shift to the public comment section. Amy, has anyone submitted public comment?
I've not received any requests via chat or in advance of the meeting. So if somebody's in the room and wishes to give public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand. I did receive just some written materials that I forwarded to the pub in between meetings, but that weren't requested specifically for public comment, but I will incorporate those into the record as well.
All right, I'm not seeing any hand raises and I'm not hearing any voices from the void. So we can wrap up the public comment portion. And so board members, Amy sent out the draft minutes of the August 15th pub meeting. If anyone has any edits or updates that need to be added to that, speak now. getting a thumbs up of approval. All right, not seeing any hand raises. We will accept the August 15th pub meeting minutes as is. All right, so as we spent the majority of our meeting with the One Water, and so there was recently an ombudsman report about, I believe, BES. Amy, you can help me out if you'd like to. Overcharging for certain things, and I only read some of the news articles, so I'm going to pass it to Amy actually on this one.
It's Water Bureau's billing and customer service related to returned fees, and their policies related to that. And so they're doing both some corrections to some fees that, or anybody who was overcharged, but they're also doing a more thorough kind of comprehensive review of all their fees with their customer service group and equity manager and their teams. And so tentatively, we have booked them for the October 17th meeting. So we will have some follow-up related to that. So if you want more details about the report and Water Bureau's response to that, links were sent to you all. Just wanted you to be aware of that. I'll include it again as read ahead as you prepare for the October 17th meeting, as well as if there's any new information that they have to provide in advance of that. But that's the essence of that. And really quickly about we do have the field trip for next Friday so far. Fingers crossed. It looks like it's going to be a lovely day. So let's hope that the weather forecast that far out holds true. And it doesn't look like it's a 90-degree day. It looks like it's in the 70s, which is perfect in my mind. For those of you who have RSVP'd and plan to go, I will be reaching out to you regarding coordination of lunch and making sure that we get that set up by early next week so that we're ready for the trip. Everybody who's going, just bring whatever drinks, water bottle that you want with you, and then the rest I will make sure that we have provided. And then the final piece is just still looking for somebody to volunteer for the October 8th Administrative Review Committee. So let me know if you are available at that time. And any other general announcements from others, or can I move to the agenda for upcoming meetings? All right. So I think I need to reconnect with leadership with the end of summer and all of the kind of I guess, schedule impacts that the staff are having at the leadership level. I need to confirm, what from our original plans for the September 19th and first October meeting are still going to lay as they are, and what gets, replaced with some conversations related to some of these larger initiatives. So we do have the annual report and work plan, which I have been starting to work on drafting based on conversations that have taken place in meetings. So you've seen an early draft of that. If you haven't taken a look at it, please take a look at it before the next meeting, because at least by code, PUB is required to submit something to council by the end of September that summarizes the prior year's work and talks about what you're working on this year. So just want to make sure that I'm accurately capturing all of your intent and expectations for that document. So we're not going to have as much time as we usually do between meetings to give feedback on that. So if you want to reach out to me individually, if you have feedback and want something to be proposed before the next read ahead draft, please contact me directly, email or phone or text, and I'll try to incorporate your thoughts and make sure that we get that out by the end of next week so that folks have a more complete document to consider at that meeting. And then I will work on the other pieces that the big efforts that have been going on. Some of the BES's work on their strategic planning documents and the work that they've been doing internally, as well as some of the other large projects that PUB had asked for updates on. So I will work with Robin in coordinating those. And thanks to Heather, who has volunteered to facilitate at the September 19th meeting in Robin's absence. Anything else that anybody wanted to flag for the agendas that I'm missing or haven't prioritized sufficiently on here? Obviously, whatever's going on with One Water also kind of rises to the very top. So at whatever point that is the priority, and or if we need to extend meeting or schedule a special meeting, I will connect with Robin and you all and make sure that that happens. So I'll stay coordinated with you on that. All right. That's it for my end.
Any final questions before we wrap the meeting, board members? All right, so with that, the next meeting is September 19th at 11 a.m. and this meeting has been adjourned.
Thank you.